Well, this is it. Time for the final 3 entries. And we're finishing in style.
Yeah, kinda sad to see this list end though. I enjoyed the work we did here.
I feel the same. If I make a similar list like this, up for helping?
You bet! And looking at the title and the list so far, I think the British would like us to balance this out a bit.
Then let's put some proper music on, and start with the last countdown of this list.
Number 3. London, Midland and Scottish Coronation Pacific 6229 Duchess of Hamilton. Oh boy, was that a mouthful. But securing a spot in the top 3, rightfully, is one of 3 surviving examples of Britain's most powerful steam locomotives, the Princess Coronation Pacifics from the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. They were a further development of the earlier Princess Royal Pacifics, which were developed from the Great Western Kings we got familiar with in Part 1. Heck, William Stanier, the designer for most of the modern LMS locomotives, used to serve under George Jackson Churchward on the GWR at Swindon. And to save some time and to put the development list into context, GWR Star by Churchward, GWR Castle and King by Churchward's successor Charles Collett, LMS Princess Royal and Coronation Pacifics by Stanier. So yes, 4 cylinders. And how powerful? Well, on the 12th of February 1939, engine 6234, the Duchess of Abercorn, was recorded at 3,330 horsepower during a run between Crewe and Glasgow.
Between 1937 and 1948, a total of 38 Coronation Pacifics were built, numbered 6220 through 6257, with the first 10 being streamlined. The first 5 of these were painted Caledonian blue with silver stripes, and the other 5 were painted red with gold stripes. Number 6229, Duchess of Hamilton, was the last of these 10. All later Coronation Pacifics were built without streamlining from the start, and the whole class became known as the Duchesses, since that's what locomotives 6225 through 6234 were named after. Anyways, fame for Miss Hamilton already began 2 years into her existence, where she swapped identities with class pioneer number 6220, Coronation, and headed to the USA for the 1939 New York World's Fair. Incidentally though, the paint jobs were completely wrong. Despite being the total opposite in color to the real Coronation, Duchess of Hamilton looked fine. Even though the USA required bell and headlight looked okay on it.
Duchess of Hamilton was repatriated back to Britain in 1942, with its streamlining removed 5 years later, as it got in the way of essential maintenance. Luckily, the streamlining was the only part of the locomotive to bite the dust, as she would end up being one of 3 Duchesses saved from scrapping. The other 2 being 6233 Duchess of Sutherland and 6235 City of Birmingham. In the early days of preservation, both of the actual Duchesses, as in named after Duchesses, were bought by Sir Billy Butland to be put on display at one of his holiday camps as exhibits for the children's playground there. It was an odd use for sure, but at least the 2 big ladies made it beyond the days of steam, and 6229 made it out of the camp in March of 1975. In 1976, the Friends of the National Railway Museum accepted the locomotive from Butland's on a 20-year loan and immediately began to restore and preserve it.
With a fresh lease on life, and painted in its slightly less appealing British Rail livery, Duchess of Hamilton first ran as the museum's flagship locomotive in 1980, and was operational until 1985. After purchasing the locomotive from Butland's in 1987, and an extensive overhaul, it resumed running in 1989 with plenty of mainline action, and some nice runs on the Great Central Railway while running in some new axle box bearings and tires for her driving wheels. The locomotive was withdrawn from mainline duty in 1996 when its 7-year boiler ticket expired. It was a relatively short career, but 6229 left her mark in a very positive way. Even with a tiny moment of cocking up when its tender derailed at Templemead Station in Bristol in November of 1994. Also, in a bit of a flashback, it's worth pointing out that the once streamlined Duchesses initially had a sloped top on the smoke box, but they were replaced with fully rounded smoke boxes. Just saying.
For several years, the Duchess had been a static display piece at the National Railway Museum in New York, standing next to a certain other locomotive we'll get to in a bit. In September of 2005, it was announced that her streamlining would be reinstalled at Birmingham's Tyseley Locomotive Works, and on the 18th of May 2009, the engine was returned to the National Railway Museum, going on display in a new exhibition called Duchess of Hamilton, Streamlined, Styling and Era. Today, 6229 is still on display at York, next to a 1937 Chrysler Airflow. But despite her younger sister engine, 6233, Duchess of Sutherland, having claimed the title of the Duchess, there are rumors that Hamilton could steam again. Now, what was that certain other locomotive I mentioned before? Oh yeah, a certain Garter Blue legend.
Number 2. London and Northeastern A4 Pacific 4468. Mallard. Don't roll your eyes. When it comes to British steam excursion stars that have been retired, you could have seen this one coming from a mile away. But yes, it's Mallard, one of the all-time greatest steam locomotives ever built in the whole world. The LNER A4 Pacifics, with 35 examples built between 1935 and 1938. Essentially tweaked versions of the A3 Pacifics with a stunning streamlining, they were the crown jewels of the LNER, and the locomotive 4468, named Mallard, was the undisputed star of the entire class, thanks to smashing the world speed record for steam engines, reaching 126 miles per hour on the 3rd of July 1938, during a special braking test on the East Coast Main Line, specifically over Stoked Bank, south of the town of Grantham. Mallard was specifically chosen as she was the first A4 Pacific fitted with a double chimney and killchap exhaust system.
Mallard had cemented her place in history and became a very easy pick for preservation. And Nigel Gresley, the designer behind this legendary class, along with most LNER steam locomotives since the Grouping Act of 1923, was knighted for his workmanship. But the run was not without risk, of course. Gresley was well known for designing 3-cylinder steam locomotives, with Walshart's valve gear on the outside cylinders and his very own conjugated valve gear on the middle cylinder hidden under the boiler. To give the valve gear its credit, it does work very well, and even made its way to America.
How did Gresley's valve gear made its way to America? Well, it was fitted to the Southern Pacific 5000 class 410-2s and the Union Pacific 9000 class 412-2s, with sole survivors 5021 and 9000 both on display at the Los Angeles County Fairplex in Pomona, California. Sorry, Christopher, feel free to resume.
But back to that conjugated valve gear. Mallard's record-breaking run proved that it could go wrong when it doesn't get the specific attention it needs during servicing. In fact, when Mallard broke the record, the big end bearing of the middle connecting rod had melted. And to make it even more risky yet legendary, it was discovered that some bits of track hadn't been replaced since 1910. So, to recap, the engine was pushed beyond its braking point, reached 126 miles per hour, ran on bits of the main line that were almost 30 years old, and she didn't derail. Can you see we got a first-class machine here?
I do. And happily, the damage caused on the run wasn't severe enough to put the engine out of service. Mallard lasted a very long time after that, getting a well-earned retirement in April of 1963, and immediately becoming one of the star attractions at the National Railway Museum. In the mid-1980s, the Friends of the National Railway Museum, who also restored Duchess of Hamilton we mentioned earlier, restored the iconic Gresley Pacific to working order for a small excursion service, because the 50th anniversary of her record was coming up. She may have operated for only a little while, from July of 1986 to July of 1988. but it was beautiful to see the world's fastest steam locomotive race along the main line again.
It sure is. But even in her second retirement, Mallard is no stranger to fancy displays. Having sat with her 3 active sister engines in the UK at NRM's outbase at Shildon in 2010 was spectacular enough, but 3 years later, that was utterly trumped when all 6 of the surviving A4s were brought to York for the 75th anniversary of Mallard's record-breaking run. Since this picture of the survivors shows BR and LNER liveries together, we've included the BR numbers in their subtitles to help you identify them in the pictures. But Mallard's surviving sisters are as follows: 4464, Bittern; 4488, Union of South Africa; 4489, Dominion of Canada; 4496, Dwight D. Eisenhower; and 4498, named after the legend himself, Sir Nigel Presley. To make it even more special, it's worth pointing out that Eisenhower and Dominion of Canada were shipped from North America for this event. To see a great family reunion of all the surviving A4s was certainly a majestic sight to behold.
And one that would have definitely brought a smile on Sir Nigel Gresley's face. The man, not the engine. So, the British delivered a huge punch on the list here, even if they have 4 locomotives on the list so far. But there's still one final locomotive left to go.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's our number 1 pick.
Sorry, Christopher, but I'm going to introduce this one as well. And I'll do it properly.
Oh, okay.
But feel free to guess.
Oh, easy. LNER A3 Pacific 4472, Flying Scotsman, the world's most famous steam locomotive.
And you're wrong. The Scotsman is superb, no denying that. But she's already been back under steam since February of 2016. And I'm actually a bit disappointed with it being painted in British Rail green as engine 60103. Not to mention the identity crisis it had when it comes to the road numbers, while she was still painted in wartime black during its testing runs on the North Yorkshire Moors Railway. Yeah, the double chimney and the smoke deflectors were British Rail modifications for the A3s, but Scotsman looks so much better in apple green as LNER 4472. It's her signature livery. Sorry for the rant.
Okay, then it's V2 Prairie 4771, Green Arrow, another LNER engine that's still in apple green.
No.
What about LNER 8783 that you mentioned at the end of the last video?
No.
Would I be right in guessing that your number 1 pick is American?
Yes.
Okay, that narrows it down. Let's see. All the surviving Reading T1 Northerns.
Nyet.
Savannah Atlanta 750.
Nope. By the way, you should have shown this picture of 750 with Scotsman. Also, giving up.
Nope, I ain't giving up yet. Is it Grand Trunk Western 4070?
I know very little to nothing about that locomotive.
Then it's a tie between Grand Trunk Western 5629 and Burlington Route 5632.
Clever thinking. Both of the deceased Jensen locomotives. But no.
Oh man, I'm running out of straws here. Pennsylvania Railroad K4 Pacific 1361.
Nah.
Atlanta on West Point 290.
Nope. Though I find it slightly more interesting than the 4070.
Is it Cotton Belt 819?
Looks nice, but no.
Briscoe 1522?
Looks nice, but no.
Okay, I give up.
Tee-hee. I'm surprised because my top pick was a very easy one. And you were so close too. So, without further delay, I proudly present number 1 on my list of the top 10 retired steam excursion stars from Britain and America. Was that so difficult?
A little.
You've got to be kidding.
I should mention as a side note to you, Jim, 1218 is popping up a lot in the comments section on my top 11 list. It's a wonder I didn't include it then, but I may include it in a future video as something like, ones I overlooked or something.
Anyway, taking the top spot on my list is the sole survivor of the N&W's 43 Class A 2664 steam locomotives. The 2664 wheel arrangement was a pretty rare one to begin with just 50 such locomotives built in total in North America. The 1218 was completed in June of 1943 and assigned to pulling freight trains out of Portsmouth, Ohio. She was retired in 1959, not just becoming the only member of the A-class to be preserved, but becoming the final steam locomotive in the world left with a 2664 wheel arrangement. How did the locomotive not get scrapped? Well, she was sold as a steam generator for an industrial plant, and in 1965, Mr. Blunt bought that locomotive from the plant for his Steamtown, USA collection, and it even made its way to the Virginia Museum of Transportation on loan from the Steamtown Foundation in Vermont for temporary display. After a bit of an argument, the 1218 was given to the Norfolk Southern for restoration in exchange for 2 diesels.
For 2 years, the Norfolk Southern restored this 400-plus ton colossus at their company's steam shop in Irondale, which is actually a suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. In 1987, the 1218 was fired up and made its break-in run from Irondale to Wilton, Alabama. The locomotive made many excursion runs, and in 1990, it went to St. Louis, Missouri to participate in that year's National Railway Historical Society convention, along with the 1522 and 819 we mentioned earlier, and Union Pacific 844. The 1218 stood tall and proud, and made its last run in 1991 at the end of that year's steam season.
When the 1991 steam season came to a close, the 1218 was sent back to the steam shops in Irondale and Birmingham for restoration, with the hopes of having the locomotive ready for the 1996 operating season. But this wasn't to be. After the deaths of William Claytor and his younger brother Robert, the 2 men responsible for the Norfolk Southern steam program and the 1218's return, much unwanted change came to those steam operations during the 1994 season. Major restraints were placed on the steam trains, limiting where and when they could run, and yearly insurance costs climbed from $10 million to $25 million, with another increase in the next year.
Could it get any worse? Yes, it could. To compound all the other problems Jim mentioned earlier, a switching accident in a yard in Lynchburg, Virginia, early on the morning of September 28th, resulted in the derailing and damage of 9 steam program passenger cars, with 2 of them being deemed unrepairable. There was no coming back from this, and so, in December of 1994, the Norfolk Southern decided to close their steam program. In 1996, the 1218 was put back together and towed to the East End shops in Roanoke for storage. In 2001, the locomotive was donated to the city of Roanoke, reunited with the 611, and resides back at the Virginia Museum of Transportation on permanent display.
Although the 611 was successfully brought back to steam in May of 2015, and officially named Spirit of Roanoke in the process, the 1218 might not be so lucky. It looks in great shape on the outside, but it turns out there are a lot of parts missing when she was reassembled. At this point, it's very unlikely that the A will ever be steaming again. It stands as a proud monument in Roanoke to the people who designed and built her, and the people who brought her back to steam nearly a quarter of a century later. Along with turning a lot of heads while she roamed the Norfolk Southern for excursion service, her way of taking the term sole survivor to new heights, as in last remaining locomotive in the world with a particular wheel arrangement, made the 1218 my number 1 on my top 10 retired steam excursion stars from Britain and America.
I need a drink.
hope you enjoyed this top 10. Want me to do more steam locomotive related top 10s? Or even a top 20? Or a top 11 like the Nostalgia Critic?
Why 11? Because I like to go one step beyond.
Feel free to leave suggestions in the comments below. And if you want it to be another collaboration with Christopher, or if you like to narrate with me, feel free to ask.
Well, I'm gonna go do some other stuff now. Being here was an honor and a privilege. But by the way, where did you get that video footage of the 1218?
Big Steam, Superpower Lux in den USA. A DVD featuring the 765, 611, 1218, the Cass Shays, and a mediocre segment of the 844 while it was still 8444. Mediocre because they reused cab footage from the 611 for it. And it was made by German trained DVD company Rio Grande Videos.
I see. Anyways, goodbye, thank you for watching, and keep on steaming.
And Jeremy Clarkson probably won't be mad at me for using that power clip from the Top Gear India special in part 2.
And on that bombshell, it is time to end. Thank you so much for watching. Good night!